Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a really wild story. It's about how the fall of two massive empires created this river of dirty money, and how London basically built a giant reservoir to hold it all. We're talking about how it became the dirty money capital of the world. All right, let's just kick things off with a quote that pulls no punches. I mean, calling London the dirty money capital of the world, that's a huge claim. But look, this isn't just some random opinion. This is coming from people who've been tracking this stuff for years. So the big question is, how on earth did London get that reputation? Just to give you a sense of the scale we're dealing with, look at this number. £6.7 billion. That's how much UK property has been bought with what's officially called suspicious wealth. And you gotta remember, that's just the stuff they could find, the tip of the iceberg. The actual number, it's probably way, way bigger. So the question is, how did we get here, right? This wasn't some kind of accident. It didn't just happen overnight. The answer, and this is what's so fascinating, is in this kind of perfect storm, a storm created when two giant empires fell apart at the seams, the British Empire and the Soviet Union. And this timeline really lays it all out. You had two things happening at once. On one hand, as the British Empire dissolved, all these little territories, think the British Virgin Islands, suddenly needed a new business model. And what did they find? Selling financial secrecy. At the exact same time, boom, the Soviet Union collapses. And out of that chaos comes a flood, a tidal wave of cash from the new oligarchs, all of it looking for a safe, respectable place to hide. And there was London with its newly deregulated markets, basically rolling out the red carpet. Okay, so how does this actually work in practice? Let's say you're a kleptocrat. You've stolen a fortune from your own country. How do you take that dirty money and magically turn into clean, respectable wealth in London? Well, it turns out there's a playbook for that, a very clear 4-step guide. But before we get into the playbook, let's make sure we're all on the same page with this word, kleptocracy. It literally means rule by thieves. That's it. We're talking about corrupt leaders who basically loot their own country's resources, and then they need somewhere to park all that cash, somewhere to make it look clean. So this playbook has 4 stages. Think of it like a recipe for money laundering. First, you've got placement, then layering, then integration, and finally, defense. If you get these 4 steps, you'll understand exactly how London's financial system was turned into the world's greatest laundromat. Step 1, placement. And this is where it gets kind of wild. It is shockingly easy to do. All you have to do is get your dirty money into the system. The front door? A UK shell company. And get this, for just 12 quid and a couple of minutes of your time online, you can set up a company. That's it. You're in. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute. If it's that easy, who's actually checking this information? What's stopping me from just, I don't know, making up a name to hide who I really am? And the answer to that question for a very long time was pretty much nothing. Absolutely nothing. The UK's official register of companies, Companies House, just didn't have the power to check if any of the information was real. I'm not kidding. People have found companies registered to Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, even Adolf Hitler. It was a total free-for-all, a real Wild West. Okay, so once your money is safely tucked away in that shell company, you move on to step 2, layering. This is the part where you make the money trail disappear. You bounce the cash through a whole maze of complex transactions, making it so complicated that it's nearly impossible for anyone to trace it back to where it came from or to you. And listen, you're not doing this alone. There's an entire ecosystem of what people call enablers, highly paid professionals who help make all this happen. We're talking about 86 UK banks that have been caught up in moving corrupt money, 81 UK law firms too. It even goes as far as prestigious schools and universities. And that brings us to the final wash cycle. Step 3, integration. This is the payoff. It's where your now clean money comes back into the real, legitimate economy. And what's the #1 move? Buying up luxury property in London. A townhouse in Belgravia, a flat in Mayfair. See, you're not just buying a place to live, you're buying a veneer of respectability. For years, one of the main tools for this was something called the Golden Visa Scheme. The idea was simple. If you had a couple million to invest, you could pretty much buy your way into the UK. And who was using it? Well, at its peak, 60% of these visas went to Russian and Chinese nationals. It was basically a fast track to legitimacy for people with, let's just say, very questionable fortunes. So what does all this add up to? Well, right now, there are around 84,000 properties in the UK where nobody knows who the real owner is. They're owned anonymously. And how do they do that? You guessed it. through those offshore shell companies, the exact same kind we talked about back in step 1. All right, final step. Step 4, defense. This is absolutely key. Your money's clean, you've got your fancy London house, now you need to protect your shiny new reputation. And guess what? London is the best place in the world to do that too. Its libel laws are famously friendly to the person suing, which makes it the perfect place to shut down journalists or any critics who dare to ask questions. And this just shows you how much of an unfair fight this is. The people tasked with investigating this stuff, the UK's Serious Fraud Office, they have a budget of about £50 million for the whole year. A single top oligarch can make that much in less than a week. It's not even a fair fight. The regulators are completely outgunned. So for a long time, this whole system just kind of hummed along in the background. But then, the war in Ukraine happened, and that was a massive, brutal wake-up call. Suddenly, the UK was forced to see this not just as a financial crime problem, but as what it really is, a major threat to national security. The entire way people think about this has changed. This isn't just foreign investment anymore. No, now it's seen as a weapon that kleptocrats and authoritarian states use to undermine and rot away democratic systems right from the inside. So the government finally took action. After years, and I mean years, of dragging its feet, it passed something called the Economic Crime Bill. This thing is designed to take a sledgehammer to that 4-step playbook we talked about. It forces foreign companies to say who really owns UK property, it makes it faster to hit people with sanctions, and it gives more power to seize assets when someone can't explain where their money came from. And that leaves us with one last really big question. The UK is finally trying to clean house, but after decades of welcoming this money with open arms, has the poison already seeped too deep into the system? Is this money so tangled up in politics, finance, and real estate that maybe, just maybe, the damage is already done and can't be reversed? That's the thought I want to leave you with.